Hey everybody, Texas Stroker here, Lance's Performance Shop, Lone Star Mopars. I come about 9:30 p.m. here, late December, just before New Year's Eve, and we have got an interesting little video for you here. So, this is, of course, Ernst Manufacturing. They make our beloved socket boss, right? All of our socket rails and organization. And recently they came out with something that we're big fans of, which is the new colors. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab these. We've got orange and we've got green, and I love both. And I do unconventional things. I do SAE on orange and metric on green. It's populating the 34-inch Master Tech from US General, and I love it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's awesome. And there is one thing that is kind of lacking on this front, and that's that this is what you can get. This is 18-inch, and you can go to town and do whatever you want to there, and granted, everything will fit, short of some excessive socket collection or something crazy. But your quarter, your 3/8 drive, whatever, you can populate these rails and, you know, have space to spread them out, space to compact them, and, you know, do your quarter shallow 6-point and quarter shallow 12. Whatever you want to do, you can basically make it happen on 18 inches of real estate. However, if you were unaware, Ernst also does things where they have 13 inches, kind of a step down from this, and then they also have 8-inch. Something that you've heard me talk about in tons of our tool hauls where we bring stuff in is, man, you know, I wish we would expand the colors, wish we had this, wish we had that. Well, I've been needing to make this video for a long time because I wanted to do this before I absolutely butcher everything. Because true confession ahead of time here, it's like 50-50 straight up that this either goes really, really well and is awesome and I'm pleased with it and you're like, wow, that's great, or it's just a complete showcase of debauchery on how to ruin a perfectly fine product in an attempt to create something else. Now, certain elements of what we're going to do are safe. I feel very confident that we can execute them and they're going to be fine. Might not be perfect, but they'll be pretty dadgum good. There's other elements of this. Oh, we run the risk of screwing things up really, really, really badly. So let me kind of highlight one of the things I'm trying to do here. All right, this is a recent tool haul, and this is a Koken. Believe it or not, this is 1/2-inch drive. And this is just basic SAE 6-point shallow sockets, nothing crazy, nothing fancy. No clue what I've done with my tape measure. I swear it was here a second ago. And I just kind of want to highlight something, right? So typically, you know, if we were to come to town and you would think like, hey, I'm going to populate my 1/2-inch sockets, you'd be like, oh, I better get the 18-inch rails, right? Totally agree with that. However, this is fairly comprehensive at 3/8 to, yes, believe it or not, 15/16. You always hear me complain about people not including 15/16. It's here, okay? Something that we did, if you remember from the tool haul, I added an 1 1/8. Why? Because I use 3/4 quite a bit. So that's kind of the upper echelon. You might want 1 1/4. Maybe you can make use of 1 inch, you know, for oil filters, things of that nature. But basically, bread and butter, this is kind of covered. It's like the thing that I love right here from Koken and their 3/4 drive SAE set, 1/4 to 3/4. Could you go smaller? Absolutely. Could you go bigger? You bet. Ideally, you know, like if I'm turning something 7/8, you know, or 15/16, I'd prefer to have 1/2-inch drive handle. But 3/8 to me is sort of the middle ground. It's where I want to be excessive and go too far too low and go too far to the top, right? There's a lot of people that like 1/4 drive. I'm not one of them, okay? Unless I'm dealing with something that's like delicate and dainty, sort of like really, really old grill frameworks that are made out of plastic. Yeah, I'm going to go 1/4 drive because I don't want to over torque and break things, right? There's that sickening sound of plastic cracking. And that to me is where a 1/4 comes in. There's a lot of people all the time, you know, like telling me, oh, you got to get 1/4 drive, go get more 1/4 stuff. I don't know, man. I'm like, I guess I'm stuck in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it's just my logic has always been like 3/8 is your sweet spot, and 1/2-inch is nice, and 1/4 is just, like I said, for delicate stuff, small stuff. Certain times when you get really small, yeah, you're going to want to go 1/4 for sure. but I don't really fall in, I guess, to what seems to be the mainstream, if you will. So this 1/4 to 3/4, while it's not like the world's greatest, most comprehensive, it's pretty solid for 3/8 drive, right? So, and if you're being true to yourself and you like stick to your guns and you're like, well, you know, this is big, gotta get the spindle nut off, or you're working on torsion bars, you're gonna step up. But for 1/4 to 3/4, this right here is awesome. And you're like, oh, it's a 13-inch rail. No, this is an 8-inch rail, okay? It's kind of hard to measure for one reason. It's magnetic, which makes it extra awesome. But as you can see right there, the tail of the tape, it does not lie. This is an 8-inch rail. And it fits perfectly these sockets. How many sockets? I believe 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 sockets on an 8-inch rail. Would some of you want these spaced better? Sure, I could see that. For me, I've been rocking this for quite some time. I absolutely love it. The greatest thing about this, stands up straight. I have mine in the top of the cart. You know, if you had it in a drawer, it's going to be strong enough. These are surprisingly strong magnets for what they are. It's not going to spill. It's not going to turn over. If you've forgotten, these are twist to lock. So, I mean, it's solid as can be anyway. But, coolest thing, this is small enough, like your little creeper pockets, or if you're on a creeper seat, you can easily put this like right there with you, which is super awesome. Another thing that's great with the magnets, I can stick this to frame rails. Keep in mind, if you're working like commercially, be very careful when you do that. Not because you're going to get hurt, okay? Not because, you know, you risk damaging customers' stuff or something. You run the risk of leaving this there, right? And if you needed, say, the 9/16 is what it turned out the fastener was, and you left your whole socket rail there, not fun, right? You not only have to buy the rail again, you have to go get the whole socket set. So it's sort of like, you know, you always lose your lights or they drive off. Sometimes they come back to you, sometimes they won't. And that's the biggest thing. But with me, I'd love to have a lift. I don't, but if I did, this would be super cool. It would stick right to it. I do, however, have the gantry crane, and then you bet your britches, this thing goes on the side of the gantry crane and helps me out with whatever I'm tearing apart to mount up, raise, or lower. So these have been cool, but the main thing I want to highlight here, you would think, like, just like you would think, like, okay, well, you need an 18-inch rail for your 1/2 inch, you need a 13-inch for your 3/8. That's great for expansion, or if you have a huge set, sort of like we did with our Capri Impacts. But if you're sticking kind of to the basics here, this is super nice. Again, this is all about compacting things, space saving. You don't want it so compact that you can't function. But this, to me, I mean, like I said, I've been using this for months and months, and I have zero issues with it. So that, again, 3/8 drive on an 8-inch. This right here, you know, this before us in orange and green is 18 inches. So this rail from Koken, I think you'll be able to see the tape there. It is just about an inch. A foot. So it's going to come in probably like 11 3/4. And then the actual area of the sockets, even though these are pretty squished together, if we look at that, you're at about the 10-inch spot. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dude, that's going to be really tight. Just the sheer size of the sidewalls because of your drive-in is going to keep that from happening. You're 100% correct. Socket end to socket end, we're at about the 7-inch mark here. So 10 inches is going to be way out there. And even if we start at the edge of the boss, not happening, all right? Here's the thing. Think, if you will, to the 13-inch rail. And that is where I think we could compact our 1/2-inch drive sockets. Now, the issue being, and why these are here, Ernst does not make the new orange and the new green in anything but 18-inch. And if you're like, that's sad, you know, I'd buy some 13s or 8s, or, man, this magnetic thing, you just hyped me up for it and I can't get it in green. That's unfortunate. I totally agree. I don't know. I mean, clearly, you know, they've had their standard colors for a while. You know, your black, your red, your blue, give people the basics. That's sort of like the uniform thing. Adds a little variety and customization. And then, of course, they do high-vis. Lots of people love the high-vis, especially if, say, you're going to stick your magnetic rail on a frame of a car or in an engine bay. And you're like, oh, hey, that looks important. I should probably pull it off before we send the car out, right? Thing is, I don't know, like, these were clearly additions, which are awesome in my opinion, but this is the safest thing. You'd rather give more than give less. If you start at 8, people are like, well, I can't fit my 1/2-inch drive sockets on that, I'm not going to buy it. You know, because where I go, SAE and metric, some people, you might have black for 1/4, blue for 3/8, red for 1/2-inch across the board. You might even want to go that route for SAE and then do metric and high vis black and green. There's sky is the limit to personal preference with what's available. But what I'm going to get at here, while they do not have a 13-inch rail, we can make one. And how can we make one, you ask? With a saw. That's right, because if this was 8 inches, I'd have a hard time extending it out to 13 or 18, right? But with this right here, we can snip it down. I'm not sure how we're going to cut it just yet. Hot knife, hacksaw, bandsaw, there's all kinds of options. I don't know what's going to give us the cleanest cut with the most factory finish. We're not going to be able to replicate the sweet finish Ernst does, but I can make it functional, and that might be good enough for us. So let me show you part of what I've done here. We've got these. I think they might wind up staying intact, but right here, and this is something cool if you were unaware, I mean, you can do this with anything they've got. We have blank rails. That's right, these are just the rails. There's no socket boss tray, there's no pegs, there's nothing. This is just a plastic rail. We've got 4 orange and we've got 4 green, and that's because I've got some really crazy ideas. Now, cutting this down to 13 inches, we're going to leave basically 5 up for the taking, okay? What can you do with a 5-inch? You can put your hex bits, torque socket sets, you know, things that are kind of oddballs. Another thing, you know, like if you have a really, really big impact socket set or something, sort of like my Proto that goes way the heck up there, there's always, like even with the 18-inch from Ernst, with MTS, everything on the market, I've never seen anything that allocates enough real estate to get the entire set populated. So you're either going to have a guy pull like the lowest sizes, or you're going to have a guy take like 3 to 5 off the end that are just the biggest sockets, right? 5 inches can handle a couple of those, you know. Same thing, sort of like 3/4 drive. Maybe you got like your bread and butter stuff, and then you've got the ginormous one that you rarely use but you need for some seldom used jobs. Stick it on your little 5-inch there, right? Make use of it. The other thing that's really cool, since these are 18 inches, what is 8 times 2? Last I checked, it was 16. So, in theory, if we want to attempt to give these SAEs their orange rail, I can get 2 8-inch rails out of one 18-inch strip. Now, this is kind of one of the great highlights of Ernst, because if you still are unaware, while these are both 3/8 18-inch rails, socket bosses with the pegs and everything, if you've got unused pegs, if you want 1/4 and 3/8 and half on the same rail, you can do it. It's what I like to refer to as modular, meaning, again, the sky is the limit. If I want to have 5 1/4 drive sockets, 8 3/8, and 4 1/2-inch, if you've got some crazy, you know, like comprehensive, maybe even short and tall hex bits, you can put a rail together to suit your exact needs. The labels, which we have 192 per, they even accommodate that. If you ever sit there and you just use it for sockets, you might skip over this or forgotten about it. But you've got labels in there for torques, hex, whatever. It's all kind of here. So if you want to label it and be comprehensive, you can do that. Now here's the thing. If you're sitting here and you're thinking like, well, hey, you know, that's not magnetic. That's a shame, you know, but what are you going to do? Like, this tray is really nice. You can just grab it and take the whole set, shallow and deep, you know, right over to the job site or a cart. I totally agree with you. And here's the other thing. Just like we bought that in bulk, well, we've done this. We have picked up a 13-inch socket boss tray. This stuff, again, as you can see here, this is a 2-row 13-inch socket boss tray. That means, should we be able to cut this at a point that we're happy with it and presentation-wise, we can equip our rails right into this 13-inch tray. So we're not having to fabricate anything custom here. This is already in existence for us. Super nice. Thing is, with these sharp eyes, some of you might have noticed this, these are not, man, I was sticking everything over there. These are actually semi-deep, and if a guy has semi-deep sockets, there's a good chance he's got shallow and deep, and that's exactly the case. So in that instance, if I've got shallow here and deep there, what do you do with your semi-deep? You just get another 2-row tray and put your 6-point and 12-point together that are semi-deep? You could, but a better option is to do this, a 3-row tray, right? And that's what we have. So if we cut 3 of these down to 13 inches, we can have shallow, semi-deep, deep. You can have quarter, 3/8, half, whatever you want to do. Now you'll note I've got 2 of these because, again, I've got some really crazy ideas. And I don't know, this is where we're starting to get into the dicey part of I don't know if it's actually going to pan out or not, right? But without giving too much away, you're going to have to wait. This is all going to unfold in real time. This is what I want to highlight to you. If you're thinking like, okay, well, this is cool. I like the idea of buying this and cutting it down to what I want, but I'm not already invested in the Ernst ecosystem. You know, I've been using spring steel rails, or I have some cheap junk that I hate and want to get rid of. How do I get the clips without having to buy the tray? Well, this is option number 1. This is the Socket Boss Accessory Pack, part number 8445. This is going to sort of be your most comprehensive if you're sort of just testing the waters, you're going to see what you want to do, what you can pull off. It's how you would go to town. Quarter drive clips, you're going to get 22. 3/8 drive, you're going to have 18 in this kit. And for 1/2 inch, you're going to have 17. You're also going to get the face drive ratchet and extension holders, which you can kind of see pictured right there in the corner. So it's a little kit here. In addition, you also get labels, which again, super, super nice. You can see here number 0, number 1, number 2. You're thinking like, what would I ever do with that? Screwdriver bits, right? You come in, whether it's an impact driver or just, you know, something to put on the end of your ratchet, you're home free there. So this is a great option when you're just going to town. However, I know some of you are like, hey, I want to do this with my 1/2 inch drive stuff only. I don't need quarter and 3/8. I just want the clips. Well, you can do this. You can come in, you can buy standalone clips, okay? And if you're still unsure, but you think, hey, you know, that Socket Boss Accessory Pack's a really nice start, but I need like another 17 or I need another 15, you know, 1/2 inch drive clips. Well, here's what you can do. Right in this instance, we're going to start with our 3/8 because it's what I've got. Just like the Socket Boss Accessory Pack, you get 18 per pack. This is part number 8441. We can take these blank rails right here, we can populate it with these suckers and go to town. Coming in next, our 1/2 inch stuff, okay? We've got 17 per, just like we do in the accessory pack there, but again, this gives us 2. That's going to cover 2 rails, especially if you're cutting down, you'll just kind of have to play with it, figure it out. But basically 17 per pack and 18 per pack respectively for our 3/8 drive. Quarters, if you're curious, we would have 22. But right here, just like you have in the kit, if you're thinking like, man, I'd kind of wanted that ratchet holder that he showed in that accessory pack, but I don't need the pegs. Well, you guessed it, you can get that standalone as well. It'll be part number 8355. This is the ratchet and extension holder. And again, it's just like what you think you see there. It's going to slide on your rail, and then this will hold a ratchet or an extension or some combination thereof. Again, depending on what you do, that's sort of where you're going to fall on things. So, where does all this go ultimately? Multiple projects. Multiple projects which are either going to go really well or really poorly. And the most simplistic one, though, is just right here, right in front of us. We've got the 1/2 inch drive Koken SAE 6 points. Spring steel rail is not going to cut it. I want them on, of course. You're following along or paid attention here. The orange, that's going to be my SAE color code. For the cart, now if these ever do wind up elsewhere, they would be blue, 100% blue. I am, if you're curious, for like other things, green is kind of like my straight across the board metric at this point in time anyway. Cool thing, like let's say you do orange and green like I do and you get sick of it in 4 years, like I just wish I would have been conventional and done black and red. You can do it. You can make that happen. So looking at this, just again, refreshing back to you, this is about 11 3/4 of an inch on this 18-inch rail. We can replicate that. We can cut it at 12 and have 6 left over. Just, I mean, end to end here, it's basically the exact 18. I think you can sort of see it there coming to frame. I want to highlight this because it's important. Ernst has a really nice finish out here where it's easy to slide the pegs on. I know these things because I'm constantly tweaking the rails. But you have one other thing you want to pay attention to, and that is this. This might look innocent, might look unimportant. This is actually pretty critical if you plan on doing one of two things. A, hanging the rail vertically off of a nail or a hook or something. Or B, using it with the socket boss tray. Socket bosses, the way I've always set mine up on the left-hand side, if we can get this to come into view for you, you have this. When I press down on that, I can then slide the tray, or the whole rail, if you will, forward, and that allows you to extract just that rail. So if you just want to take your shallow sockets over, or you just want the deep, you can leave the tray in place, the box, the cart, whatever, and you can extract just the standalone individual rail. So what I'm going to do right now is, I don't know if we'll make a series out of this, or if it's, you'll only see part of it, i.e. the successful stuff. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to attempt to create a 13-inch rail, or some semblance thereof. You know, if you're going to truly customize it, you wouldn't necessarily have like the socket boss, right? Or the tray, I should say, to create a socket boss of your own. But I'm going to do this, and this is the side I assume you would be the same, want to start from. It's where this is going to hook. We then want to cut down, you know, say about right here, and have it just in place. Spoiler, instead of doing 2 at once, you know, if you're shallow and deep or whatever's going to go back there, start with 1. Because if you screw it up the first time, you'll know before you've screwed up the second one. So I think the plan of attack here, I'm just going to try, I'm going to be really old-fashioned. I'm just going to pick a groove here and kind of use that as my guide for the saw. And I think we're just going to hacksaw it and see what kind of a finish out we get. I might cut a little bit farther ahead of that in case I want to like sand it or try to contour it, you know, type of a thing. Or maybe even melt it down, who knows. But I just want to see if we can create one 13-inch rail to fit this socket boss to house these Kokens. So wish me luck. We're going to try to make it happen right now. It's the big reveal, right? No, not quite. What have we done? Well, we've gotten this out of the rubber band group. This is your start point. This is your 18-inch rail. Beautifully finished. Again, note the contours there. That's what we want to replicate. If you're curious what these holes are, and you think like, hey man, they sent you defects or what's going on there, a lot of times people don't even know these are there. But if you wanted to like permanently mount these, you want to screw these down to a piece of wood, whether it's on pegboard behind you, some thin piece of wood in your toolbox drawer, that's kind of what that is. Sort of takes the place of the magnet. Well, most of the times you're going to have like a peg cover this one up, and then this one you'll sometimes see, but that's what that is. Now, if you're thinking like, well, hey, why are you here if you haven't done anything? Well, we've been planning, and let me show you how. Right here, this is our spring steel rail. And you think, cool, hey, something's missing, and it's the sockets. Kind of a big deal, right? Have you been robbed? Did a tornado come through the shop and take just those sockets? Not quite. What we have here, now this goes back to when we sort of, you know, I hit Vicky up and I was like, hey, I want to do 3-row out of orange 18-inch. What's the best way? And she kind of told me, well, hey, you know, go ahead and grab a couple of the 2 rows and then get a 3-row tray. So if you recall back to that video, that's what we did. But I've had this just sort of waiting in the wings, the way things panned out. You've got a whole rail of 1/4 inch, and then you've got a rail of 1/2 inch drive, right? And what I wanted to do before we make any cuts is figure out, is this going to work? Is it going to look good? Am I going to be happy? What are we at space-wise type of a thing? And really wish I wouldn't have dropped the tape measure just then, but this is something. And if you think like, hey man, that's looking really tight, I would agree with you. I can definitely compact it a little bit. I mean, if you're unfamiliar with how these work, put them on, twist, So you don't have to have that much space. You could totally crunch them together. Case in point, I'll just throw these 3 sidewall to sidewall, and it's still super easy to execute. So you can compact it if you're so inclined. But the big thing here, if you think back to the tool haul, I went ahead and did this. All right, this is our 1 1/8. 15/16 is what was on this rail. I have added the 1 1/8. Okay, we could do this professionally and get measurements, but I'm just going to put the rail here to kind of highlight it. Pretty much right on the money, right? And we know that this was 11 3/4 inches. So that's about the real estate that we've gotten, and we haven't compacted it all the way. So the other thing, and again, this is just, the more you prepare, the better the end result, in my opinion. One of my long ago purchases, which I have not used yet because I wound up doing other crazy things, was this. This is a blue one. Obviously, again, this has been sitting in the box for forever. It would be used if I could get around to doing some more tool hauls, but why is this important? You're like, quarter drive? What in the world, idiot? These are 1/2 inch, 3/8 to 1 1/4, or 1 1/8, I should say. Why do you need a quarter drive stuff? I don't necessarily need it, but here's the deal. I can set this down, and this is a 13-inch rail. Okay, sort of like your default logic would be, with your 1/4 inch drive stuff, you'd get the 13-inch, and that's what we have here. So what this is going to allow me to do is get a feel for A, the real estate, but B, we can also come in and I'll know exactly where to cut. You can measure the rail, which we could do if we had our tape measure not on the floor. But the other thing we can do is we can just use this sort of as a guideline, and that's exactly what I intend to do. So I'm going to take this guy, we're going to line it up on the back side, and we're going to make our cut. You get a feel for how close this is going to be, but I think it's going to work out in our favor. So it's just a little situation where if we ever did want to add a socket, we might be in a crunch. But like I said, 1 inch I don't really use, and 1 1/4 I would probably be wanting to spin it with 1/2 inch drive, let alone an impact, right? So I think this is going to be the ticket for me, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to make our cuts. Basically what we'll do is we'll line this up together. This is the cool thing about these being flat and rigid construction. We can take this and we can just come in and make our cut right about here, and then like I said, I don't think we'll be able to replicate that at all. What Ernst did there, it's a really nice finished edge, but we will have a 13-inch orange rail, and that's going to be pretty cool in and of itself. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a cut, and we're going to see what this thing winds up looking like. I don't know what you do with your old socks, but chances are they might live a less exciting life than mine. Now, you'll note a faint black line right there, and I've kind of come out to the edge of that smooth little radius that they did. Again, remember, you can always cut shorter, but you can never cut longer. And so that's going to be our guideline. And what's really cool, this is ribbed. You can kind of hear my finger. So it's going to make it like super easy to guide the blade down. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is the weapon of choice this time. I've got freeform, and I've got a little bit more strength right there. I honestly don't know what's going to cut this the best. I don't know if this is going to leave the best finish. I don't know if I should be using a die grinder. I don't know if I should go fire up the compressor and get a cutoff wheel. I don't know if we need to go to a scroll saw. There's tons of options to cut it. I just don't know what's going to leave the best edge. This is basic. This is easy. It's what I'm going to try first. The good news is I have lots of crazy ideas, so we can wind up trying lots of different cutting methods. And the good news for you watching this, if you're inspired to do the same, I'll make the mistakes so you can just make the cool stuff on the end. So I'm going to get to cutting, see what she looks like. Number one, this cut exceptionally well. You'd think that with plastic, but you never know until you just dive in. With the little ribs, which you can kind of see there, I mean, that just is the perfect guide for a blade. If you ever wanted to practice using a hacksaw or a compass saw or whatever, this is a great... if you have some spare pieces you don't know what to do with, hey man, you know, send your kids or grandkids, niece, nephew out there. But it cut really well. There's kind of the shrapnel. We got a nice little like orange peel zest thing going on. Next thing to do before we do anything like try to contour it or clean the edge up, I just want to knock the dust off and see if it fits the 13-inch tray. Alright, so here we are. And you can see our cut rail. I will tell you, after my initial test, which is again just comparing right up against a Ernst manufactured 13-inch rail, I might want to cut the next one just a little bit longer in the event that I can get a cool contour on it, but you can kind of see where we're at. Really nice structure there. But here's the deal. Here's a 13-inch tray. Here's a proper 13-inch rail. We're going to set that down again. If you didn't know the way these work, they just snap and slide right into place. This locks the rail, obviously. So again, to unlock, you just simply press down, slide forward. Really easy. Kind of confusing when you're brand new to it, but the more and more you work with them, the better it gets. So here it is. This is obviously unpopulated, no pegs, nothing like that, because we don't know if we were idiots and we've ruined it or not. Well, we set it down, we slide it in, boom. Beautiful. Now, like I said, the only real downside here is just, doesn't quite look as cool as that one does. I might run it over to the belt sander and sort of see what she could wind up contouring to, but I also am afraid we might need all of that real estate. Case in point, let me show you. Man, this one is tight. It did the same thing. That's not just us. It was tight on that blue one too. But right here, yeah, you know what? I think it'll be okay. We've got a little fudge factor here, so I'll go see if we can do anything cool with this. If nothing else, just sort of puts like a slight radius to her, I guess is what we'll do. The other thing I will do is come in and, now you don't have to see it now, but we'll get it populated, see how we like it, and then go to town. Alright, as promised. Now, what would a smart person do in this case, aside from wear proper safety gear, meaning eyeglasses? You wouldn't use your brand new 13-inch rail, right? We've got that thing, it's as cut right now. What would you do? You would take the scrap end, right, and you would see what you can do with it. And I was able to contour it fairly well. Then I went back to town trying to clean the top off, because here's what happens with plastic. And the reason that I opted to cut it with a manual saw as opposed to a power tool, when it gets hot, it melts, right? That's just kind of something that happens to things. And the way things panned out here, while you can shape it pretty good, it's just a situation that then you kind of get that like ugly orange peel on the top, and it's just not aesthetically pleasing. So much so, if I had to pick, and keep in mind I haven't contoured like the sides and the bottom, it's sort of a complex piece, right? Sort of an MW, whatever you want to call it, channel structure. I'm almost inclined to say I prefer the as cut versus shaping it. I think we could totally replicate their shape, not the structure of it where it like tapers off, where this is recessed more than the bottom. We could probably do it, but it's just a situation where the way that's going to sand, let me one-hand this, I guess. I don't recommend this, but try to show you what I mean. I think you can kind of see and you smell it too. Obviously, if you're here in person, it's just a wonderful aroma I've created. But see what I mean about how it's sort of like just does that orange peel. Again, just when plastic gets hot, that's what it does. But I think I'll play with it a little bit more before we give up. Again, using the sacrificial lamb here, the 5-inch piece. This is what you're trying to create. Okay, and we're not going to be able to do that, I can tell you right now. But we'll see if we can't do something a little bit better. And if nothing else, I'll clean that up, even if we have to like hand file it, which might be the route we need to go. But using this is awesome. It's quick, it's fast. It just results in a lot of burned, melted plastic, which kind of harshes the aesthetic vibe we want. So we'll see what we come up with, and I'll be back. Alright, so does it look as cool as the factory piece? No, but with a straight edge, it's Less discernibly cool. So right here though, I went ahead and I did contour that a little bit more on the sander, and like from this angle it's not bad, right? It's sort of like, hey, that's looking more like the Ernst finish. And then you do that and it sort of like kills it for you. That's really not doing justice to all the slag. Again, that's just the slope. I was trying to reenact what they do. What I did with this one, if I can one-hand this for you, I did put it on the belt sander and I instantly regretted it. What I wound up having to do is like finish her out with a little small hand file. A warding file is what I used. Works really good on the plastic, but it's just not going to be quite the same, but it's a minor thing overall. And speaking of a minor thing overall, right here we've got our 8442 17-piece half-inch drive bit set, and what I have underneath this socket rail is the labels that come with it, right? So 3/8 to 15/16 plus an inch and an eighth. We're going to go ahead and pre-populate these. I'm going to then slide them on the rail, and we're going to see if what we did works. And if you think, hey, you know, come back over to the workbench here for me. Look at that. You barely have any space left over on that 18-inch rail. Don't you just want to use that? And then if you were to add the 1 inch and an inch and a quarter, or, you know, even something smaller, it would be like perfect, you know, and you can even space them out a little bit more or what have you. I'll agree with you, and the reason you go ahead and you do this is because the Ernst stuff is modular. And what that means is if we create this half-inch drive 13-inch socket boss tray and we hate it, I've already made the 13-inch rail. All I have to do is take the half-inch pegs back off and put 3/8 pegs or a quarter pegs or some combination of the 2 or the 3, and it's still functional. That, again, is the beauty of a modular system. If you've got a really good organizer, but it's fixed, you can never like adjust it or tweak it for what you have or what you want or what you need, you're sort of stuck with the default and you'll never be truly happy. With this type of a system, again, custom tailor it to you. You're the end user. You can do a lot of different things. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label these pegs, swap these sockets over to that rail, and show you what it winds up looking like. Oh yeah, I've spent a lot of time doing this in my life, but I can't say I have any regrets. So 3/8 to 15/16 plus our inch and an eighth for 3/4 hardware, and we're going to now move on to sliding them on over the rail. Now, the real question is going to be, can you do it over the end that you've mutilated? And I hope to find an answer for that. But if we can't, the solution is simply going to be, we'll start with the inch and an eighth, slide it on the still factory end, and move it on down the line. So I'll go ahead and get you on the tripod instead of struggling with this, and we will see if we can back in these labels from the open side. All right, you ready? I'm going to start with 3/8, and we're going to load it on the end that I cut, and see if we can make it happen. I'll snap her down right now. Boom. And we're going to slide it into place. If we can. Have we ruined it completely? No, we have not. Sweet. So, instead of making you watch me do that, 9 more times, I'm just going to go ahead and do it off camera and show you the end result. Alright, so here it is on the rail, 3/8 all the way through 15/16 plus our inch and an eighth. If I set it down right there, boom, got it on top of the footprint that we have. So I'm going to now switch the sockets out, and then we'll do our final test, which is a trial fit into the 13-inch socket boss tray. Alright, so where is it? Where's the payoff? Well, I'm holding it by one socket in my hand. It's right there. That is our Koken 3/8 to 15/16 plus the inch and an eighth on one custom cut Ernst rail. As you can see, we have got this thing laid out just like we wanted it. If we come in and we grab our little tape measure, again, space across the sockets just a little over 12 inches, probably about 12 and an eighth. The rail itself, dead on at 13 inches. So this is super cool, because what I have to show you is compare that versus this. Okay, if I come in and we take, let's just slide, whoa, a rubber band just shot off. So let me be cautious with this one, don't want to put my eye out. We're going to set that down, and if I take an 18-inch virgin rail, Again, this is the full Monty. You can see it stacks down there just fine. We're going to go keyhole to keyhole. This is basically what we've done, okay? We've taken, as you can see, even on this side, we have lopped all that off. All that is about 5 inches. What that allows us to do is go from this tray, which this is the thing with the Socket Boss tray, you got to think in terms of real estate. So the rail itself is 18 inches, but the tray, if we just go corner to corner, it's about 19. However, they've got handles on them, and this puts it at about 19 and a half. The 13-inch tray, if I come over here and grab it, still have our little blue one populated there. But corner to corner on our 13-inch tray, you're going to be looking right at 14 inches, and then add the handles on, and we're just shy of 14 and a half. So we've shaved off, you guessed it, about 5 inches. Profile, much easier to just kind of appreciate it in person. I have these handles like as close as a rough estimate can be. And this is what we have extra real estate. It's not a huge deal. It's extra space. Yes, you could fit a couple more sockets. Again, the thing is you get bigger and bigger, you fit fewer and fewer. So down here, you know, in theory, if you were to go smaller, you could fit way more sockets. But when you're going bigger, kind of limited to what you have in hand. Case in point, if we did a 1 inch and an inch and a quarter, the inch and a half is going to have a hard time fitting, okay? It could probably be done, but anything past that, and I think we're out of real estate. Now, this is a real question, though. If we take it and we set it down in the tray and we slide it, it locked. Look at that. This is a 1/2-inch drive set that I'm totally content with. I've added what I thought was important to me. 3/8 to 1 1/8. There's our blue rail for sample. Here it is in action, totally upside down. Again, note, index finger only, index finger only. This is the beauty of the Ernst stuff. It's robust and it's completely modular. I'm going to set this down. This is going to be sandwiched by a pair of 18-inch socket bosses and an 18-inch socket boss. We've literally, tail of the tape, I know it's going to go off the edge of the camera here, but it's 5 inches of space that we have saved. Now, what can you do with 5 inches? Let's say that the 18 fits fine. Let's just say that you've got like a 20-inch box, okay? Your 18-inch tray clears by like a 1/2 of an inch, we'll say. Now, you've got a 14 and a half to a 20. That's going to be 5.5 inches. But here's the deal. What's the profile on a socket boss? Coming right across a 2-row, you're going to be sitting at around 3 3/4, a little bit more than that. But the bottom line is, I can take this, and where in a standard drawer or top of a cart, this isn't going to fit because it's off over here standing sideways. This all of a sudden fits, and you can run north-south in addition to your east-west style. So I am pretty happy with this, and if you didn't know, I do have a deep set. I've not actually gotten to record that video yet, but we do have a deep set, exact same 3/8 to 15/16. I didn't go ahead and buy the 1 1/8 in that one, but this is going to allow us to have a 1/2-inch tray that holds our entire 6-point socket selection in chrome with extra space on the end. So this is, I guess, kind of, because it's probably getting pretty long, that's probably going to be our first custom Ernst project. You've seen what I brought in. You've seen most of what I brought in. You haven't seen the other little piece that will sort of be a saving grace if I totally butcher something. But we'll save that for that particular video, because there's a very high chance that it doesn't go according to plan. But, this did go according to plan. I was confident we could pull this one off, and we did, and it's a beautiful payout in my opinion. Keep in mind, this, you would think like, hey, that's a nice, this is set up for quarter stuff, right? And you would think, ah, well, you know, put 3/8 on that and that's fine too. We now have 1/2 inch there. If we can utilize the 13-inch trays for quarter, 3/8 and 1/2, all of a sudden now, you're able to picture it maybe where we have this tray right here as our SAE, and then I come down with this 13-inch tray right to the side of it, and it's metric. You kind of see where I'm going now. And what that does, again, coming in, we're just going to go ahead and be generous and call this thing 14.5. So if we double that, where are we? We're at 29. Think about your drawer sizes. There are an awful lot of drawers, at least in stuff I own, where you can't run an 18-inch socket boss beside an 18-inch socket boss. It sucks. I don't know what people are thinking when they lay out toolboxes. I've had tons of thoughts on that I won't expound on here. But there's another product I'm pretty fond of, the friction peg socket holders, and it's got an even wider footprint than the 18-inch socket boss system. So I'm left with a deal where I can't put them side by side, and that sucks because in my mind that's what I envision. This, compacting this down to 13 inches, is going to allow me to make that happen in the confines that I'm with right now. The ideal solution would be a bigger toolbox with a bigger drawer. I've also gotten miffed by the lack of full-length drawers on some things that I own. I think there should be 2 at minimum, preferably 3, but more on that later. So this, though, I can stack 13 and 13 side by side, and I can come in well under the ridiculous space constraints I'm limited by. So obviously the 8-inch is even a better setup, but I mean right here, for comparison's sake, again, this is the magnetized one, but that's sort of what are we doing again? We're taking off 5 inches. So 18, 13, 8. That's the way Ernst has chose to lay this stuff out. I really do wish that, they just made the stuff, but maybe that'll happen at some point in time. Until then, I like it so well, I'm going to attempt to create what I wish they had available. So this is the first installment. The other ones are going to be way dicier and probably not near successful. But, where you will see this next is in the tool hall where I have the deep sockets, and we'll just kind of bring that out, have that as like the piece, the finishing cherry on the top, whatever you want to call it. And we'll take it from there. But I do have a lot of plans, and I do hope the majority of them work out. I hope all of them work out, because it's going to be super cool if they do. But for now, this is, to me, awesome. I'm super happy with it. I do wish we had a nice finished edge like the Ernst pieces have, but it's just not really achievable with the structure, Like these are formed in that manner, and this, although it's very robust, that structure on the bottom, I'll show you right here, where this comes to a nice finish out, and it's got the side panel. Once you make a cut, you're sort of on your own. And yeah, if you could cut right at a sidewall, it'd be really good. We sort of cut right in the middle, and then as you sand back, you see more and more of the structure. But it works, it's functional. From here, you would have no idea that this, doesn't look near as good as the finished rail behind it. But it's functional, that's what I like. It's compacted down, it's going to save me space, it's going to create space where I can run a bunch of these rails, and that makes me a happy little guy. So on that front, let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if you want to see 13-inch options from Ernst in the new colors, orange and green. I ask you this all the time, and this is sort of me, like, if you think, oh man, that guy's just, he's out there, saying these things. No, I really wish they would make it. But since they don't, we're going to try to create it on our own. And going with other things that I've told you that I wished would be available, you might be able to deduce some of the stupid things I'm about to attempt. So, if you want to stick around for that train wreck that'll either be a super awesome or a super terrible experience, by all means, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell. Typically, we got automotive content Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Texas time, tool stuff Saturday mornings Texas time. But on that front, for those of you that always say, hey man, you need new batteries, just now started flashing red. So I'm going to run inside, download this stuff, transfer it, get it edited, probably uploaded, get the batteries charged for tomorrow. I think tomorrow I'll finally maybe have a full day, unless I get called into work again, which has been a recurring theme over this holiday. But anyway, I've been wanting to do this for a really long time. I'm pretty happy with it so far, and I can't wait to see how everything else turns out. If you're interested, like I said, hopefully you stick around, but let me know your thoughts. Again, if you want Ernst to make purple and yellow as their next colors, if you just want them to make this awesome orange and green and 13 and 8, what I really would like to see the most, magnetic And I would love to see an 8-inch socket boss tray. That to me would be super cool. But if you agree, if you want to see that stuff, if you would buy it, leave a comment and tell them, send them emails, call them and say, hey, I want you to make an 8-inch socket boss tray, because I would buy that and I think it's great. And not just because I want it, but if it's something that you genuinely want and you would purchase, let them know. And who knows, maybe it can come to fruition. I still think purple and yellow would be cool too. I'm not saying I would go out and get that, but I'm saying I could see it selling pink as well. I think would be a safe bet. It's orange, blue, and green, man. I'm pretty content right there. That's kind of my cup of tea for tool stuff. So, with that said, my feet are freezing. I'm gonna get inside. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope I've got your appetite whet for future destruction. And, on that note, I hope I catch you back here for more action from the shop.